The adrenal glands. The adrenal glands. Yeah, I can't do that. I'm sorry. We have the suprarenal. They can also be called the suprarenal glands for a couple of reasons. Let's go ahead and dive into that really quick. Adrenal glands are super important. They really, if you remember glands, again, I'm going to hit this one more time. Glands are referring to their only function in the endocrine system is to release some type of hormone. Now let's talk about why they're called adrenal glands, suprarenal glands. Well, first off, they're on the top of your kidneys, which is another name for a kidney or any type of terminology when you describe a kidney is called the renal. So you're adding to the renal tissue when you have an adrenal gland. They're also on the top of this renal tissue, this kidney tissue, so they are called supra, or above, or superior to your renal tissue. Now there are a lot of things that this tissue, this gland really does. It releases a lot of different types of hormones based on the positioning and the tissue types within it. It is also a really fragile gland. In fact, it is so fragile, when somebody's needs a kidney transplant, what they will do is they will leave the old kidney in. They'll pull away all the other stuff to help support and survive the new kidney, but they're going to leave the old kidney in because it's so close and attached to that adrenal gland. If you were to accidentally remove the adrenal gland, you're going to cause a lot of mishaps and uh-ohs and boo-boos. So it's just easier to leave in the old kidney. There are 3 histological regions. So we got 2 regions called the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. And the adrenal cortex can be cut up into 3 pieces: the zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. The zona glomerulosa, reticularis, and the cortex, or the medulla. The zona glomerulosa makes the mineral corticoids. The one that you're going to care about is aldosterone. Aldosterone, we're going to talk about that in AMP4 when we talk about electrolyte balance. Cortisol, well, we're going to talk about in a little while. That's your stress hormone, but a lot of the glucocorticoids come from the zona fasciculata. The DHEA is a type of androgen. It's a very similar hormone to that of male hormone, aka your testosterone. So aldosterone, again, a lot to do with just electrolyte homeostasis, particularly the uptake of sodium, the kick out of potassium. Remember, you don't really want potassium hanging out outside your cells. Potassium's great to have it inside, especially in your neurons, but not so great to have outside. Sodium, it's pretty nice to have on the outside because it sort of helps with, signaling and all that stuff. And it is activated by this little beauty of a pathway, really quite intense. You do not need to know this. I'm going to go ahead and just tell you this right now. You do not need to know this for AMP2. You will need to know this for AMP4, pathophysiology, as well as nursing, but for AMP2, y'all have way too much to worry about right now. What you do need to know is this. If you increase aldosterone, you increase how much sodium is reabsorbed as well, and, well, water really likes sodium, so it'll follow it, as well as the excretion into urine of potassium and hydrogen. The glucocorticoids, remember that the sandwich of the cortex, it releases this stress hormone, and it is called cortisol or cortisone, and it's an inactive form. You may remember cortisone. We produce it quite nicely out in the wild blue yonder. A lot of us put cortisone creams when we get a bite or a bubo or a mosquito bite or something like that. What it does is an anti-inflammatory response. It is regulated by a negative feedback, meaning that it shuts itself off. And it does really well at helping avoid stressors or dealing with stressors. So it's going to break down your protein to be redistributed to the appropriate location. It's going to help out with glucose formation because you know what? You need that energy to deal with stress. It deals with lipolysis. Hey, let's break down those fats. Let's make it into glucose. Yay! That sounds okay by me. So here's a little, again, Cortisol is there to help out with that stress, so it's going to take everything it can get to help out with providing the nutrients that you need. Lactic acid, the stuff that if you have anaerobic response, which we'll talk about later in AMP4, it can be made into glucose. Protein, make it into glucose. Fat, make it into glucose. Glucose is great for helping out with stress. Maybe that's why I'm so addicted to ice cream. Nah, I don't believe so. Anyways, so with the adrenal glands, it's good. Cortisol kicks some booty, helps out with anti-inflammatory, it helps you out with all the stresses that you need. Problem is, if you got too much going on, if you got hypercortisolism, you've been having stress for way too long, the levels of cortisol are way too high, you're going to have the reverse effect going on. Effects that really you don't want to happen. This is called Cushings. What happens is that fat starts to rebuild back up. You're going to get a fatty pad on the back of your shoulders that's called a loosely termed, I apologize for the term, buffalo hump. You're going to get the stretch marks from extra fat growing on the belly and in the chest area. You're going to, because again, that cortisol is there to help out with fighting against boo-boos and owies and inflammations. If you reverse that, you're going to start getting bruised really, really easily. You'll notice that they did put up a picture of this gentleman right here. You'll have the more rosy red cheeks and the baby face look with that of hypercortisolism. Finally, the last hormone of the cortex, we still have to hit the medulla, sorry y'all, is the dehydroepiandrosterone, or DHEA for short. We're going to stick with DHEA. That sounds nice. DHEA is not really have any significant roles in men. What it's really there for, or at least that what we understand now, we're probably going to find out a lot more what it actually does because it's present in men for a reason. But in females, it's there to help with androgens, or producing those androgens, or the male-like hormones. These can be and will be converted into estrogens. So in postmenopausal women, or menopausal women, they will begin to, because the ovaries aren't really doing their jobs anymore, producing a cycle and all that stuff, which produces estrogen, these DHEAs are the ones responsible for producing this estrogens. If you are lacking in estrogens, if you are lacking estrogens, okay, after menopause, then you are more likely to have a osteoporosis, because estrogen has a lot to do with maintaining your bone density. So most postmenopausal women are the most likely culprit per people to have osteoporosis. While men, yes, it's great and wonderful because testosterone is continually produced, but the flip side to having testosterone is that you produce way too much cholesterol, and it kind of explains why men have heart attacks more often. Finally, the adrenal medulla. This is the one that we kind of talked about quite nicely when we talked about the autonomic nervous system. This is the place where that sympathetic nerve goes ahead and innervates into the adrenal gland and releases that epinephrine, norepinephrine, that fight or flight goodness. With that is it for the adrenal tissues.